Hello. It's a real pleasure to be here today. So I would like to thank Fiona and Steve for giving me the chance to speak. I've been working with ELE for about 3 months now, since mid-August as the e-learning environment's digital literacy assistant. I'm just going to tell you a bit about how I got involved with the ELE. So I'm actually a student here. I'm in third year Anthropology bachelor student. I've been interested in digital anthropology, and I've been taking a module in this course in my department. And my interest in digital literacies arose since the first year at UCL, where I've been working with the ELE on a project. I'm also writing a dissertation on this, so this is actually preliminary ethnographic work, because ethnography usually takes about 18 months. So these are just to raise questions and to just kind of direct discussion for today. So my work is based on participant observation, and I like to point out the value of qualitative data in what we're trying to do in terms of digital literacies. So for my presentation, I'm going to just go over these really quickly because I'm going to obviously go into more detail in the presentation, but I'd like to first address the terminological issues we're facing and address these. I'd like to look at what the goal is today is to support students in their studies, and because that will help them become more employable in the future. And so how do we tailor to a student body that is by nature diverse? I would like to also look at that we're trying to adapt what UCL does, not substitute any of the practices we have today. From the view of the students, I would like to see how the way staff members view students and vice versa actually affects student engagement within the university. So I'd like to look at how practices such as the way we communicate with students actually reinforces a view of students which is not very good for student engagement. I'd like to introduce different channels through which we can start to introduce change. All the different stakeholders who are here today, you're going to see how your involvement with the university actually affects student life. And then I'm going to look at teaching how to learn, because I believe that's what we're here to do today. It's to look at transferable skills. So problematic terminologies. For the JISC, digital literacies are capabilities which fits an individual for living, learning, and working in a digital society. So behind this quote, there's an assumption that what we're trying to do is to make students more employable. It is to become more competitive in the UK workforce, and it kind of goes towards this equation between raising ICT skills will have a direct impact on a national growing economy. Now, what does it mean to live in a digital society? Well, it's this assumption that our relationship to information is completely different. We have a lot of content being produced, being communicated. People communicate much more with each other. And the way students relate to information and each other is completely changed. Now, I'm basing this a lot on Mark Prensky's work because he's the one who coined the term digital natives. And his work has been contested, but we'll look at that a bit later. So according to him, students have changed radically. Today, students are no longer the people our educational system was designed to teach. So students now are used to receiving information really quickly. We're better at multitasking. We function best in networks. We prefer instant gratification, and we prefer games to serious work. So now this view is shared not only by staff members, but by students as well. And this is a student who talks about her relationship to information.
People who've grown up in our age and we have this generation, we know how to use the internet. Everyone knows something, Google it.
So, I mean, this is still from Ken Robbins' animation I'm sure you've all seen on YouTube, where a student here is used to an environment of really stimulating devices where information is being shared really quickly, and he's trying to focus on a teacher who's teaching on a blackboard in a very traditional way. Now there's a perceived generational gap here, and So how do we adapt to a world with lots of stimulation like this? Well, we are equipped with digital literacy skills. Now you see there are a lot of different sectors that are being dealt with here. We see that we want to teach students how to use information appropriately, how to deal with digital distraction, which is, well, this essentially. And I'm not going to go through them because we'll be doing that today. But as you can see here, you could literally take a training course in every single one of these skills. They are stable, finite, they're generic, and they can be mastered. But what does this mean? It means that these skills are considered to be decontextualized, that they can apply to any type of context. And I don't know if that's quite a realistic approach to digital literacy skills, because these skills are actually developed in meaningful activities. It is in their context that these skills exist, and that's how we actually develop them. So Sue Bennett, who has written a critique of Mark Prensky's work, considers that, just to give you a bit of time to read that. First of all, she's saying that you cannot generalize about a section of the population on presumed exposure to technology, because Mark Prensky's work is based on no empirical evidence, no theoretical underpinnings, but on something that some academics can call a moral crisis, a perceived generational gap. Now, apparently, if these digital natives exist, then they would only be a minority of the population. So what I'm trying to say here is that I don't think we should base the work we're going to do here today on a concept that has no evidence. So in order to design relevant policies, we need evidence. So coming back to term digital literacy, this is a quote from one of the focus groups that we've been doing with ELE. Now all of the names here are anonymized for the purpose of research, but I'll just give you a second to read that as well. So yeah, if digital literacy is like the bare minimum, it really is an insult in language. So, I mean, I think if you use the term literacy in the context of access to technology, etc., then that is relevant. But in the context of education, where people have already been, enrolled at UCL, who obviously know how to use Moodle and Portico, we actually have to learn because we don't really have a choice. But you cannot say that we are not digitally literate, I think. Because, even for students, it doesn't really mean anything.
What can UCL do to enhance your digital literacy?
Yeah, I did. What is
what is that?
Okay, so we're faced with a problem here. If digital natives don't exist and we feel that there's a generational gap, I think that we need to create a dialogue between students and staff members. To understand, each other, basically. And if digital literacy assumes that skills are decontextualized, stable, and the bare minimum, it does not acknowledge the diversity of students, of cultures, of practices, of disciplines that we're faced here. UCL's brand is diversity. Our policies have to keep that in mind. So we need to find a new way of defining what we're trying to do. That's my first point. So now moving on to supporting students in their studies. This is coming back to the issue of diversity. Gourlay and Oliver, who have also been funded by the JISC, have been writing their new research on the uses of technologies and the development of digital literacy skills, and believe that, yes, these skills are highly contingent, they're adapted to the environment that the students are in, and they're constituted through small, everyday engagements with technologies. Which means that the skills that we'll be getting are highly contextualized. You cannot, look at a list and think that they're going to be applicable to any type of environment. And they're developed through resilience and adaptation. I learned how to use Moodle. I just have to because that's how I take my course. And also, we need to keep in mind that the skills that we'll be addressing are different in every discipline. This is a good example I like to talk about. This is Yuki's iPad in the bath. This is also an excerpt from Gourlay and Oliver's work. So this is also to show you the value of qualitative data. So this is Yuki. Yuki took a book and put it in the microwave. She melted the binding, And she scanned every single page individually to create a PDF file that she then uploaded to her iPad, made a plastic pouch for her iPad for her to read in the bath. It's quite extreme, but it's, is this a digital literacy? And is this something that everyone does? Is this something we can teach? In contrast to that, this is Henry from one of our focus groups who says that he would never switch an actual textbook for an ebook, and he's studying chemical engineering as a third year. My opinion on this is that, in anthropology, I have to read about 300 pages a week for one of my courses, and I have, 3 courses this term. And I can't stare at a screen for that long. It's just not good for your eyes. So I just, I think that if UCL is trying to develop policies, they have to keep that kind of variance in mind. If one size does not fit all, how can we tailor to diversity? Now, I'd like to talk about the implications of developing new policies and how this should behave, in an institution that's both traditional and modern. Prensky believes that teachers are outdated, that we need to learn the language that students communicate in. So for this, we need to change the content and the methodology. It's quite radical, I'd say. I don't think students think this.
Because they've been here for so long, you'd hope that they kind of know what they were doing by now. And
I apply for the academic rigor, but the international side of the boat.
We're ready to work hard, and we understand the value of experience and tradition. Another excerpt from one of our focus groups, who says that things that have been working for hundreds of years are considered to be important. So all I'm saying is that we should not throw away everything that we do so well and replace it by just really cool stuff. However, it is true, the way students communicate nowadays is very different. And UCL, I think, however, has been reacting quite well to this change.
Have you got one of those cards where it says London Social University? It's on YouTube, Twitter, it's everywhere. I get that. And it is so much. That's how I know what's going on. We met on Facebook before we came through a UCL Freshers page.
So yes, UCL is considered to be a social university. So I don't know if we should be saying that UCL has been completely, in the back of the game. But yes, the way students communicate is different. That is true to a certain extent. And I'd like to come to message broadcasting. I was speaking to Timothy Barnes, who works at UCL Advances, about digital literacy. And he doesn't think it's a question of skills, but a question of attitude difference. That there was a drop in student engagement. And to him, it's because of the way that we communicate with students is completely outdated. Students don't read emails anymore. And the fabric of university, by which I mean the way that the university functions, is designed for students who just don't exist anymore. It's adapted to students 15 years ago. And that we need to change the way that works. But one, I don't think I completely agree. And two, he said something like, if I want to send an email to all undergraduates, I can. But you see, when you do that, we feel like this. We are a homogeneous mass of sheep. We're all the same. There's no difference between us, and if you talk to all of us at the same time, we will all hear what you're saying. I think you've realized that doesn't work very well. I'm sure that you've all been confronted to your issues where you're trying to get stuff through to students. Even at the union, I think I've had a conversation with Keir about this, that it's just so difficult to get a hold of these people. Which leads us on to our next point, that the way that we see students has an impact on student engagement, and that qualitative data is really important. These are 2 quotes from our focus groups discussing the weaknesses of sending emails like this to everyone. So Mary here is a UK student, and she thinks that it's annoying to get emails that are addressed to international students because she's not an international student. Henry here is a man, and he's not interested in banking, but for some reason he gets emails about women in banking. You have our details, and you see, Henry thinks it's not that hard to filter through the people you're looking for. So it's just about choosing the appropriate audience for the appropriate information, which I think, if we're trying to develop digital literacies, it's about UCL's communication system that has to be digitally literate. So how do we get this qualitative data? Well, you don't do this. You don't look at one sheep and think that he's a sample for all of the sheep. This actually happened to me. I went to a conference in Nottingham on raising student engagement, and they asked me to sit on this panel. And they asked me, can you please tell us of a moment in your life where you felt engaged as a student? I was like, okay, well, I told them about my work with E-LE, that I felt really good, playing a role in the university and actually contributing to the body of knowledge here, that I had an impact. But wait. So where does engagement come from? I guess I am naturally an outspoken person. Like, I don't know. Oh, so you're not like all the other students. So, what you're saying is completely irrelevant. Okay, well, I'll just stop talking then. Yeah, we're not all the same. And you have students who are outspoken, you have students who, are smart, you are one of the leading universities of the world. Just saying. Okay, so what I want to just, make you just remember from this is that the way we see students actually has a great impact on student engagement. If you want to, if UCL is feeling a bit, rusty, just keep in mind that what changes all the time is the students. They come in, they come out. That's where your current of newness comes from, right? So just tap into that, basically. Qualitative data is extremely important for designing policy. You cannot base these things without evidence. And I've only been working here for 3 months, so I cannot say that what I know is, fact, but it's just samples of ideas. And adapting our channel of communication would be a testament to understanding that our relationship to information is different. And that's where I think, some people, I don't know if you agree, we should modernize UCL's system of communication. So how do we introduce START? Well, there are different ways of introducing change because there are different aspects of UCL's experience. So I'm going to just have some students talk about what they expect from UCL.
Really multicultural, just like the city London itself. That's melting pot of cultures. Awesome. Within personal experiences, to develop your own campus. So the experience taught me the most was my year abroad. I just come back from my year abroad. And obviously we're all language students, so we spend our third year abroad. It's really scary right now. It's exciting. It's learning curve. Yeah,
I don't say switched on, not that I'm not switched on already, but like I said, communicating and interacting with people, acquiring different skills, and just having a bit of knowledge of life in camera.
So, UCL is a very holistic experience. It's your academic life, it's your personal life, it's your social life, it's traveling abroad, it's meeting new cultures, meeting new people. It's, new personal experience to develop skills, how to communicate with, people in the work environment or something. This is what one of the students has said. So, diversity is important. Now, I'm using diversity as a very catch-all phrase here, and you might have to pick me up on that one. But what I mean is that exposing yourself to experiences that you wouldn't be able to seek out yourself, I think is what UCL is very good at. I wouldn't have never been able to stand in front of you today if it wasn't for UCL. Learning happens everywhere, and Helen Beetham, who writes a lot about digital literacy, believes that these skills, the learning of these skills transcends the boundary between formal and informal learning. So what I'm trying to say is that, we cannot think that digital literacy, the implementations of these policies will be centralized. When I was speaking to Timothy Barnes, he used a funny example of a Russian during the Soviet Union going to America and seeing a grocery store and thinking, wow, this is incredible. Well, you have so much bread, you have so much stuff. Like, who takes care of bread? Who takes care of butter? And that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create, have a policy that pervades across the institution. Because these forms of knowledge emerge in meaningful activities. So I think it's important to contextualize these skills to avoid this kind of reaction to digital literacy.
It's optional, talks or seminars or whatever on how to do it. Would you go to that? No. Why are you suggesting that? I well, if there's people who don't know.
There are people who don't know, and maybe they want optional talks or seminars. Well, I don't know. That really does assume that these skills are completely out of context, that you could take training courses in all of them and tick the boxes off. It's just not relevant. So how could you implement them? Well, when you say skills, students think of careers. And because careers, we all have this feeling that the world is extremely competitive and we want to be ready for it. So we turn to careers to give us information that we couldn't find in our university life.
We've been told about the careers pages and the careers office and things like the writing labs will help you being able to give you skills.
This is now so competitive that you really need to start thinking about it firstly, you need to be doing the relevant work experience to make sure you're positioned.
The career service seems to be quite good, and the volunteering starts to be quite good.
So, keep that in mind. Careers equal skills. How about applied skills? So, coursework, Henry here, who studies chemical engineering, as I said earlier, he did this work experience over the summer, and he realized the value of knowing how to use Excel. And so he was very grateful that his coursework was offered him the chance to develop his Excel skills because it was assigned, it was evaluating. So that's one of the ways we could look at it. The student here learned how to use Twitter on a course, not at UCL, but in one of the universities abroad.
You learn by doing. One of my courses I had to make a Twitter account and start tweeting.
Co-designing courses, this is an interesting idea. I think it comes back to creating a dialogue between staff and students, but it definitely does bring a lot of issues with, politics inside UCL. Who has the authority to teach who has the knowledge, and I mean, can staff members make lecturers teach in a specific way? I think that a lot of you maybe understand that kind of problem. But once again, it has a bit of a problem. Is this the digital native discourse? Do we think that students are completely different from us? One thing I'd just like to add about that, when I went to that student engagement conference, they were really trying hard to get students to, help and just collaborate with staff members. And every time we had a group session like this, all of the staff members would overpower students. Because we're used to that kind of relationship, students often think that, staffs, because that's how we teach in lecture theaters, that's what we do. Listen to me, I know when you don't know. So we need to keep that in mind when we're trying to collaborate and have a dialogue with each other. Loughborough University have a couple of co-design courses. We're a bit behind in the game. Societies. I took a course in coding for one of my courses. I needed to learn just a bit of web design. And I went to this society event that was organized by the Entrepreneurship Society in association with Computing Society. And they expected 12 people to come, and 180 people showed up. You can see, it's amazing. So I think we have to ask ourselves two questions. One, why is there so much demand for web design? Don't know. Why do people go towards societies? And I mean, not UCL, because apparently UCL does offer these services. And three, how could we ever find out about this if it wasn't for qualitative data? So once again, I'm just stressing that we do need qualitative data to understand what students want and need. You can't just put them on a podium and ask them. Mentors in our focus groups, I think this is what we settled on, that it's good because it's the right channel and it's also based on experience. It's also dynamic, it's adapted to the current world, it changes as every new generation comes. But if we're going to look at this, we need to keep two things in mind, that only undergraduates have mentors and that lecturers and staff will have limited input. I think it's a good idea, but we just have to keep that in mind. So, teaching how to learn. I think essentially what we're trying to do is to make students feel like they can land on their 2 feet when they don't know where they are. So that's what I think being successful is. Transferable skills. It's to use what you know to adapt to the unknown. And this is a student who discusses the limits of her courses in terms of content, but in terms of skills, you'll see. Whoops, sorry.
History in itself is not that useful to live in the real world. Not necessarily giving us the skills to work, the skills to learn how to work afterwards.
The skills to learn to work afterwards. How do you teach students how to learn? Well, you give them opportunities, and I think careers would say that they already do that. You need to let the right audience know about the right opportunities. So coming back to the communications channel issue. And because that has a great impact on student engagement, definitely. And by giving ownership to the students, not thinking that they're sheep, they're people. And so in conclusion, I'd like to come back to the problems behind the term digital literacy, and we need to redefine what we know, what we're trying to do. We need to define our goals. Is our goal to make students employable? Is it to support them in their studies? Well, I think both. But I think by supporting students in their studies, we support them in the future. And that's what they're here to do, right? To get a degree. What does that degree mean? That you're employable. So, implement these things. Evidence must drive policies. I know that it's difficult because the actual title of today's session is digital literacy, and that is based on kind of a lack of evidence. But let's use this opportunity to get this evidence and implement it right. We have to acknowledge the diversity of student body, which is a great thing. It's just about keeping that in mind when we implement these policies. We need to change the way we see students in our practices. So maybe the institution has to get a bit of a rejuvenation session with the way it communicates. We need to contextualize our initiatives into real student lifestyles, and I'd like to look at what these transferable skills are. What is it that you've learned in your university that you now use in your work today? I know that today's presentation for me is going to be a very valuable transferable skill. And I'll be able to put that on my LinkedIn and, get all my personal data and showcasing my achievements. And more qualitative data is needed. So thank you. And do you have any questions?